Mark Flores presents Retro Collecting 101, 5 sports games that you gaming purists need to play. Now here's your host, none other than me, Mark Flores. Drink it in, man. Drink it in. How's it going? It's me, Mark Flores, here with another great episode of Retro Collecting 101. Tonight's topic is 5 sports games that you retro game purists need to play. I personally think that sports games get a bad rep in the retro game community. To some retro gamers mainly, just mainly because of the most common reasons. But I'll get into that into the show right now, but let me first get the commercials out of the way. Tonight's Retro Collecting 101 podcast is brought to you by Game Swappers. Game Swappers, buy, sell, and trade your retro games and next-gen consoles. That's PS4 and Xbox One. You can come into contact with Game Swappers via Instagram at GAMESWAPPERS. That's GAMESWAPPERS. Game Swappers, buy, sell, and trade. Keep in mind, guys, that if you do share any which one of my podcasts through any form of social media, whether that be Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, however, the Retro Collecting 101 podcast, the Mark and Andre show, or even the more popular pay-per-review wrestling podcast, you'll be able to get 10% off towards your retro game purchases through Game Swappers. Simply screenshot your share and then let the people at Game Swappers know, and they'll be able to get you 10% off. Tonight's topic is 5 sports games that gaming purists need to play. Sports games to me get a bad rep within the retro game community. Not a lot of people play them. And just some of these retro game enthusiasts don't play them for the more common reasons. Some retro gamers don't play sports, so in theory, if they don't play sports, they're not going to play games that have sports in them. Retro gamers often correlate inexpensive games with them being boring or just not to their tastes. I've seen that a lot. Talking with a bunch of retro gamers and then spending a lot of time at Game Swappers does lead me to believe, definitely leads me to believe that there's people out there that have that kind of mindset. Definitely think that as well. So it's like this. I, as a sports fan myself, thought of 5 games that would do their best to turn away non-sports players into a true video game athlete. I want to do a quick disclaimer in saying that these games will not make you a better athlete. These games will not make you better at the said sport. They may give you, a lot more knowledge into what correlates with an actual game, what does and what doesn't, but this won't make you any better than the next person playing it. The first game I'd like to bring to your guys' attention is a game that I've recently started playing over the last year. It is both available for the Super Nintendo and the Sega Genesis for the fair price of about $7 to $10. It's called Super Baseball 2020. It was developed by Trade West, and consider it a futuristic baseball game that has all the bells and whistles from the geniuses at Trade West. With this game, picture it being a futuristic baseball game that has robots, robotic ninjas, and actual humans do actually play in this game as well. But you'll be more poised to see that a lot of these players are a lot more effective if they are robots. Robots can be upgraded mid-game as you play. So as the game progresses, whether you play like a season or whether you play like a single game, your points for getting people out, for hitting a single, a double or a triple or a home run, you'll get certain amounts of points for that. So with you getting all these points acquired up, you'll be able to spend those points to upgrade your players, to upgrade your roster, upgrade your strengths on your certain pitchers, hitters, and your fielders as well, whether it be the infield, outfield, what have you. At its core, it's a great and enjoyable game from Trade West and from the people that make the Battletoads games. They definitely knew what they were doing when they made Super Baseball 2020. this game actually is really enjoyable to me. Even if I was on the outside looking in as a non-sports player, I would say that this game is actually pretty entertaining. The mechanics and the buttons are pretty simple. The directionals, the D-pad actually correlates to the bases when you're fielding. A lot goes into it, and it's a lot goes into baseball in general. But like with that, you're able to see that these guys were actually able to make this game, which is rather complicated, a rather more simpler game to play. I do enjoy playing this game from time to time still, whether it be for the Sega Genesis or the Super Nintendo. I like the fact that I can upgrade my players mid-game to make sure that they're actually set to hit like a ball farther than most times or the other. It definitely helps out when it becomes crunch time to actually add more runs, strike a lot more people out. It's a definite great game in general. Not just a great sports game, but it's a great game to play. It's one that I recommend to a lot of people. If they ask me, what's like an underrated game, I'll let them know that it's Super Baseball 2020. The next game that we have on the list is a game it's a game on the NES. It's called Super Dodgeball. Dodgeball is technically a sport, needless to say, but so this game is still awesome to play, despite it being a dodgeball game. You have 10 plus countries, all with different weaknesses and strengths, and then you have funny home courts and quirky names with the actual countries that you pick. The closer you get to the line to throw your dodgeball, the more of an enhanced attack you get to throw. These throws are pretty awesome to see because for the time being, for the Nintendo Entertainment System was an 8-bit system. But for the graphics and the sprites used on the screen, there's a total of about, like 11 plus sprites on the screen at once. You're counting 5 players for one team, 5 players for the other, and then the referee and the ball itself, so like 12 sprites. For this game to actually produce all this movement for that amount of time is pretty impressive. For example, Double Dragon, in the game Double Dragon, it wasn't a 2-player game because they decided to max out on the number of sprites that you had in the first player mode. The game itself is worth about $10, and in my opinion, it's definitely worth more. It's a very entertaining 2-player game. Whether you play it in 1-player or 2-player mode, the graphics are still going to be the same because you'll still have the same amount of players. I definitely love Super Dodgeball. I'm just getting really backed in here, just thinking about all this, thinking about all the action that you get to play with friends. It's a great game to play with friends, and it's definitely a great, entertaining, quick game that you do not need to invest a lot of time into. I enjoy Super Dodgeball still, and it's technically a sports game, and this is one of the games that definitely made it on my countdown. The third game, NBA Jam, brought to you by Acclaim. If you haven't heard of NBA Jam by now, then you must have been living on a rock. It's one of the more popular games on this countdown that I have, but needless to say, this game itself is amazing. Whether it be the tournament, the arcade, the game ports, the tournament edition, and even Maximum Hang Time, which was the basic sequel to NBA Jam. This game takes basketball from a 10-player game to 2-on-2 action. You get the best superstars out of every NBA team from the mid to early 90s, and you give them all these quirky abilities. You could definitely say that Acclaim limited the amount of sprites on the screen to give the most graphical capacity that they could for this game, because you're able to do front flips, you're able to block shots, you're able to go 5 times higher than the actual rim is. There's a lot of action to go into NBA Jam, which is one of the many reasons I enjoy it. You'll enjoy a bunch of the superstars, the NBA superstars that you'll end up playing with, whether you know them or not. But NBA Jam is a very entertaining game. To break it down, to boil this game down, is to say that this is a great game to put two and two people that don't know how to play the game together. If a player that has player that doesn't have as much experience as this other guy will still have as much fun because they're still getting the same amount of dunks in as the other player. It's just a great game to play. I enjoy NBA Jam itself. It's still very inexpensive. I remember only paying $5 the couple times I've bought it. I think it's going for about $5 to $10 now. I haven't checked on it. I haven't checked on it in a while. The NBA Hang Time, same thing. It's only about $5. But these games are fun and entertaining games to play. I mean, these games are definitely worth more than $5 in my opinion, because the actual sentimental value to me accommodated with the ability for the ability of it being able to be replayed again and again and again. I definitely enjoy NBA Jam and NBA Hang Time, and there's not really a lot more to say about it. Just get the game and fucking play it. Simple as that. Number 4 on my list is Mutant League Hockey and Mutant League Football. I decided to count both of these games since these games could have been combined together, but EA knew what they were doing when they came to develop this game. EA Sports made Mutant League Hockey, and EA Sports made Mutant League Football. And both these games are picture NHL 94, like a regular hockey game, but then you have zombies and you have monsters and skeletons fighting each other. You have a universal horror monsters thing going on with these players. The players can get decapitated mid-game. The fighting can be awesome. You could distract referees, even in the sense of both Mutant League Football and Mutant League Hockey. There's a bunch of fighting being able to be played. Think about it as an early iteration of NFL Blitz, and even with NFL Hits as far as that goes. But both of these games are very entertaining to play. Even if you're not familiar with football, even if you're not familiar with hockey, all you would need for this game, not like how NBA Jam is, but you'll need someone to show you the ropes on it first. NBA Jam is a lot more simpler because you have one button to shoot, one button to pass, one button to block. And that's it. And then you have turbo and a directional button. That's not as complicated. With these games, you have plays, you have sequences, you have defense and offensive rotations. And with Mutant League Hockey, it's a little bit simpler, but you would still need to be under the guide of someone else that's a little bit more experienced with this game than you are. But nonetheless, I definitely recommend it to people because it's a more unsung title. With that being said, it being more unsung, it's a lot more rare. So with it being rare, it's going to be a lot more valuable. Both of these games are around $50 to, I think Mutant League Hockey is a lot more expensive, but Mutant League Football is about $40 to $50 complete. Mutant League Hockey, I think I got mine for like $90. But these games, Mutant League Football and Mutant League Hockey, are great games to play. But with these games, these are the only games on this countdown that you'll need someone else to give you a little bit more pointers if you don't have an instruction manual to play. And number 5 on my list, I know I'm going to get a lot of heat for this, but this isn't in any kind of countdown or anything, but one actual set of games that I do recommend, and they still count as sport, and I'll get into that, but any N64 wrestling game developed by THQ. WCW NWO Revenge, WrestleMania 2000, WCW vs. NWO World Tour, WWE No Mercy. Those 4 games will keep you entertained for hours on end. The developers at THQ definitely knew what they were doing when it came to actual wrestling games, and I do enjoy every which one of those wrestling games that I've mentioned, especially since they were developed by great people. The same game engine is translated to No Mercy, to WCW vs. NWO Revenge, to WCW vs. NWO World Tour, and then WWF No Mercy, in no particular order. These games have the who's who of wrestling from WCW and WWF in the mid to late 90s. You also had these characters that transcended time. I mean, even in WCW versus NWO Revenge, you had Scott Hall, who was Razor Ramon. You had Macho Man Randy Savage. You have Hulk Hogan. You have a bunch of people that were still alive and kicking. You know, you have a bunch of legends on WWF No Mercy and WCW versus NWO Revenge, respectively. It is the who's who of wrestling. You can argue that wrestling isn't a sport. I don't want to fucking hear it. These guys are athletes that are trained to do a spectacle, and the moves that they do definitely do take a toll on their body. That's why a lot of wrestlers, you know, go by the wayside sometimes. But that's neither here nor there. Those are the 5 games that I recommend. So I recommend Super Baseball 2020, Super Dodgeball for the Nintendo Entertainment System, NBA Jam, Mutant League Hockey, Mutant League Football, and any Nintendo 64 wrestling game developed by THQ. Those games are super inexpensive besides Mutant League Hockey or football. Besides those, you can get those for around $15 or less. How about that? I know for a fact all those wrestling games that I've mentioned are very inexpensive. NBA Jam, NBA Hang Time, still very inexpensive. Super Dodgeball is going to run you about $10. Super Baseball 2020 is going to run you about $7 to $10. I want to thank you guys so much for listening to the Retro Collecting 101 podcast tonight. I wanted to be sure to educate anyone who wanted to actually play a sports game but didn't, necessarily know which one to start with. I do enjoy doing these shows on a regular weekly basis. Doing 3 shows is kind of tiresome at times, but I do get motivated simply because I like, voicing my opinion. I like healthy discussions with people on message threads, so on and so forth. Anyway, I want to let you guys know is that this Retro Collecting 101 podcast has been brought to you by Game Swappers. Game Swappers, buy, sell, and trade your retro games and next-gen consoles. That's PS4 and Xbox One. You can come into contact with Game Swappers via Instagram at GAMESWAPPERS. That's GAMESWAPPERS. Game Swappers, buy, sell, and trade. Keep in mind, guys, that if you do share any which one of my podcasts, whether it be the Mark and Andre Show, Retro Collecting 101, or the Pay-Per-Review podcast, all available on Spreaker.com for 24/7 on-demand listening, you'll be able to get 10% off towards your purchase at Game Swappers, or you'll be able to get 10% more towards your trade-ins. Simply screenshot your share, let the people at Game Swappers know, and that's it. You'll be able to get your discounts appropriately. Anyway, I want to let you guys know that make sure you tune in tonight at 9 p.m. Pacific Time, in which I will be able to do my more comedic Mark and Andre show with my co-host Andre Gaynor, host of Lyricology 101. It's on YouTube. Lyricology 101 is also available via Instagram, via Facebook, and I think he has a Twitter as well. It's Lyricology 101. Just the word lyric, OLOGY 101. All throughout that. So even a quick Google search will help you out through that as well. Anyway, I want to wish you guys a good night. Please tune in for the Mark and Andre Show tonight. We're going to be talking about Sylvester Stallone, Terminator 2, a brief discussion on a couple of conspiracies, and the Nintendo Entertainment System tonight. All on the Mark and Andre Show. You guys have a good night. Thank you for listening. Bye.